Welcome to Know Your Body. I'm Dr. Andrew Wong, alongside our Director of Functional Nutrition at Capital Integrative Health, Araceli Benavides. At our practice, Capital Integrative Health, we take a deep dive into understanding your body and giving you actionable steps to organically give you the healthy life that you deserve. So today, Araceli, let's discuss the gut-brain connection, why it's so important for health.
Yes, maybe not a lot of people know, but actually our gut is considered our second brain. And that's huge, really. It can impact our mood in so many ways that we don't even think about. And really why it's considered our second brain is because it has the enteric nervous system that it's kind of like a nervous system that it's around like our digestive system and kind of like works on its own, which is pretty fascinating. That's why we don't think about when our body's secreting stomach acid, like how our food is moving throughout our digestive tract. So our body just is able to do that on its own. So that's why there's like so many nerve endings and it has its own nervous system and it's considered our second brain. And we'll discuss how that can impact like our health and how we can rebalance kind of like the gut and the brain connection. So maybe Dr. One, if you can share a little more with our audience on like how does the brain and the gut communicate?
Thank you, Araceli. I love the idea of like how the gut and brain are connected, and really we think about the brain as, having neurons and being intelligent, and having thinking, and generating thoughts and emotions, and along with the heart. But then also when we look at the gut also is intelligent. The gut also has neurons, and it's also thinking. It's also processing. There is that connection between the gut and the brain, and it's as you said, bidirectional, moving both directions, communicating through the nervous system, especially the vagus nerve as the primary route of communication. The vagus nerve, I believe, vagus coming from the German meaning wandering. So this nerve that wanders throughout the body, the nerve that wanders throughout the brain, the central nervous system and the gut, as well as other organs, and really innervating those areas, almost like a superhighway.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, I think we talked about, hormonal signals, things like serotonin, the happy neurotransmitter that kind of involved in mood and pleasure and things like that, as well as dopamine. But we will say serotonin would be a big one because serotonin also affects gut motility. And we know that people with constipation have often issues with or imbalances in serotonin.
Yes, even patients with like overgrowth of bacteria, if things are not moving well in the digestive tract, then food gets stuck in certain areas and it can lead to like bacterial overgrowth, which can lead to a lot of the IBS type symptoms. So we'll definitely talk more about how to improve that.
So that's kind of the overarching theme, which we'll probably repeat over and over in this episode today is, having a happy brain leads to a happy gut and vice versa. Having a happy gut and a healthy microbiome that leads to a healthy brain, a healthy neurotransmitter balance, etc. We also know that there's an adrenal hormone that's a stress hormone called cortisol, and cortisol also affects the ability of both the gut and brain to function optimally.
Yes, absolutely. I really like that. Happy brain, happy gut. That sounds good.
Happy life as well.
Yes.
Then there's immune system pathways as well. So the immune system is really running throughout our whole body through the circulation. The circulation is delivering oxygen through the red blood cells, but also delivering the immune cells to different parts of our body, including the gut, including the brain. And these immune cells create, potentially healing or inflammation depending on what's happening. And we need a little bit of both, really. We
Mhm.
need inflammation to kind of mount defenses, against things that might be coming into our body that we don't want there all the time. But we also need the ability of the immune system to balance. And if that immune system is not balanced, then there can be what's called more inflammation, more inflammatory chemical messages called cytokines that are coming in there and even damaging the gut and brain.
Yes, absolutely. If we have too many of those inflammatory markers coming from the gut, it can lead to even brain inflammation. So, brain inflammation in the gut can also lead in inflammation in the brain. So that's important to know that they can both affect each other. And this communication that we're talking between the gut and the brain is really, really important because it can affect our mood, it can affect our cognition, the way that we're digesting, how we're absorbing the nutrients. And as Dr. One was mentioning, our immune response, how well our immune function is working, how can we defend ourselves from like infections? So really, these can affect like all sorts of areas in our health, way beyond just our digestion. So that's a very interesting part of the gut brain connection. So we'll go ahead and discuss a little like how does this like two-way street happen? Like how does the stress affect our digestion as well as like how the gut microbiome affects our like mental health and mood overall. So maybe we can start with like how the stress affects the digestion.
Yes. Well, I think the way stress affects digestion is the following, and I'll just say it really simple because I'm a simple person.
Mhm.
When we are stressed out, our body doesn't know the difference between running away from a tiger and something like getting caught up in traffic or running late or being stressed out about a work issue, a relationship issue, or a life issue. So stress impacts digestion because when someone is stressed, they don't feel like what is called resting and the digesting, and that vagus nerve, that relaxation part of the nervous system needs to get activated to digest optimally. So stress will impair the body's ability to relax enough and to activate that vagus nerve, which, as we said before, is that superhighway between the brain and gut to influence digestion in a proper way. So basically, stress creates a digestive mess.
Yes, I like that one too. Yes, Dr. One said like if our body's stressed, our body's gonna be prioritizing like vital organs, just keeping us alive, and it's not gonna necessarily be working on the digestive portion of things. So that means that our body's not gonna be producing enough stomach acid to break down our protein, not enough digestive enzymes. So if we're not breaking down our food properly, we're not gonna be able to absorb those nutrients the way that we should. So it can lead to malabsorption and then like nutrient deficiency. So that's definitely an important piece to consider. And that's why it's so important to relax around the times that we're eating and not like eating on the go. But at the end of the pod of this episode, we'll talk a lot of about tips that we can do to improve like our vagus nerve.
Just want to double down on that stress, how it impacts digestion. Let's talk about imagining that, we're running away from a tiger or we're actually running away from a tiger. Most of the time nowadays, tigers are not chasing us after us, but we might imagine that something, similar to that. Our body thinks that we're still running away from a tiger, even if it's not an actual tiger. What happens to the blood flow in the body when that happens, when there's stress?
Mhm.
Number one is that it routes more blood flow to different critical organs that would be essential for survival. Like you said, we're just trying to survive. We're not trying to digest food. So, sending more blood flow to the heart. So there's more of a increase in blood pressure, increase in heart rate. That maybe the eyes start dilating so we can, see more visually, so we can understand if there's any threats in the environment or danger in the environment. More blood flow to the brain to think, more blood flow to the muscles to kind of either fight or run away. Where does the blood flow route away from?
The digestive tract.
Yes, exactly. That was a good setup, right?
Mhm.
So less blood flow to the gut means that we're not, like you said, producing more enzymes, or we're not moving the gut as much because there's literally not as much bandwidth or not as much resources in terms of blood flow going to the gut.
Absolutely. And as we mentioned, like if the digestive tract is not moving properly, if our gut is not having that like natural peristalsis, that natural like movement and kind of like housekeeping, like every like 3 hours that we don't eat, our body go through migrating motor complex, just contracting and moving things out that we don't need, like any undigested food or waste products. So if that's not happening properly in our system, there's gonna be like overgrowth of bacteria, and that's where that term like dysbiosis comes in, when we're having imbalances of the good and the bad bacteria, and we might start to have like too much of the bad bacteria, and that leads to like IBS type symptoms. We might have irregular bowel movements, we might have more gas, more like bloating, so we're like really feeling uncomfortable with our digestion.
I want to kind of ask a personal question. This is something that happened right before this podcast. Is I was eating some food in preparation for this podcast, kind of shoveling it down. Maybe I should have been chewing better. How many times, and these for listeners too, are we chewing our food or eating our food, but we're inhaling it? We're not really actually eating, properly in terms of, in a relaxed manner and a kind of a non-stressed out manner. And how much does that affect digestion? So I kind of want you, as you're listening to this, start thinking about how you're eating, how you're approaching the day, where are you putting those meals, how are you eating, who are you eating that with, and what is your level of stress while you're eating?
Absolutely, yes. And definitely like digestion starts in the mouth, and we have enzymes in the mouth, so like really chewing the food. And I know there's like certain numbers, like in between 20 and like 30 chews, but really what I like to recommend patients is to like chew until it resembles like baby food. So like it's really like broken down and like mixed in, rather than like counting, because it can take a lot of effort to be like 1, 2, 3, like chewing through your food. So yeah, definitely we want to make sure it's like really well mixed with saliva and until it resembles baby food, and that will save a lot of work for the rest of your digestive tract for sure.
I know babies have reflux sometimes, but in general, babies have, perfect digestion. They're not stressed about anything. They're not worried about taxes. They're not worried about relationships or whatever. So they are worried about, kind of clinging on to mommy or, making sure they're safe. But babies are in general have a really good digestion. And if we chew like a baby, we're going to digest like a baby as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess one more way that if we're really stressed out, the other way that we will impact negatively our digestion is that persistent high levels of cortisol can also damage the lining of our gut. So instead of having an intact, like healthy lining of our gut that determines like what goes into our body and what doesn't go into our body gets damaged, and we start having something called leaky gut or intestinal permeability, where like things like toxins or pathogens can just kind of leak into our system and cause more of a generalized inflammation. So that's definitely another thing to keep in mind when we're stressed, that that's also negatively affecting our digestive tract, and especially chronically stressed.
I think it's really important to know and remember Araceli because most people know that, a lot of times antibiotics can damage the lining of the gut. People that take antibiotics for like a bronchitis or some, bacterial infection, they often experience nausea and diarrhea, with
Mm-hmm.
antibiotics. I've experienced that before. Um, so we know that, intuitively and I think physically as well, that antibiotics can cause leaky gut. Other things such as glyphosate or other chemicals, inflammatory foods. But a lot of times we don't really realize or remember that stress does cause leaky gut. Stress
Mm-hmm.
causes a impaired intestinal permeability, like you said. Basically, what that means is the gap junctions between the small intestinal cells open up in response to a protein that gets elevated called zonulin, zonulin. And essentially, with that elevated zonulin, there's more leaky gut. One of the things that we want to talk about today between the gut-brain connection is that when someone has a leaky gut and there's more things passing through the gut to the bloodstream, things that would inflame the immune system. Often what happens also with the leaky gut is that people develop a impairment or a leaky blood-brain barrier, which we call leaky brain. So essentially leaky gut can often lead to leaky brain, and both of those conditions are associated with both anxiety, depression, and irritable bowel syndrome.
Yes, absolutely. And as we mentioned, since this is a two-way street, we were discussing how the stress like impacts our digestion, and now Dr. Wong was mentioning as well, like the leaky gut can also lead to mental health imbalances, and it's also like other ways that our gut microbiome can impact our mood and mental health, or just our gut health in general, is that most of the serotonin is produced in our gut. They say up to like 90%. And as Dr. Wong was mentioning, serotonin is our happy neurotransmitter. So it makes us feel good, it makes us feel happy. So if our digestive tract is not healthy, we are not producing enough serotonin, and that can also impact how we feel.
Are you saying that if our gut is rude, we will not have a happy mood?
Right,
Pretty
exactly.
much.
Dr. One has all the rhymes today.
I do. I don't know why. It's something I ate today for breakfast. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, so definitely important in that way too, especially so if you're dealing with any like mental health issues, making sure you're like treating and starting with the gut, it's definitely important.
Another thing about the gut brain is that we're talking about healthy gut, healthy brain. What I think we need to start really talking to our community about is how they're really a continuum, right? With
Hmm.
the vagus. Now we can talk about gut and brain, but they're not really separate organs because everything is connected in functional medicine, right? So it's really, I think we could talk about the GBA or gut brain axis.
Hmm.
There's axis and there's a connection between that. So when someone has a mood issue like anxiety or depression, one of the first things we think about as functional medicine practitioners is, how is their gut?
Hmm.
If they're having gut issues, like they're having irritable bowel or reflux or they're having constipation, another thing we think about because of the gut-brain axis is how is their brain?
Hmm.
How's their brain working? Is there brain inflammation? Is there leaky brain? Is there brain dysfunction that then is causing gut dysfunction? So it sounds like, gut dysfunction can cause brain dysfunction and vice versa.
Absolutely. Yes, and I'm sure some of our listeners might be wondering, as we mentioned, like the vagus nerve is the primarily like the main way that our gut and our brain like communicates. So you might be wondering like, how do I know if I have like good vagus nerve like tone? How do I know if this is working well for me or not? So like one simple like nice exercise that you can do at home to kind of see if this is good for you or not. You can open your mouth in the mirror and like stick your tongue out and say like three times and kind of try to see inside like around the palate and the uvula. You want that to raise like both sides equally. And you want your uvula to also go up like just kind of not going one side or the other. So if you notice that, that's a good vagus nerve tone. If you notice that it's only one side is like racing and not the other side, that might be like some imbalance. Or if your palate is not racing at all, that also means that the vagus nerve is not like strong enough in a way. So we can definitely talk more about like how to stimulate that. And in general, if you have like kind of IBS type symptoms, you're definitely a person that will um, that you can use some like vagus nerve stimulation to improve that. IBS symptoms being like gas, bloating, irregular like bowel movements. So yeah, that's a simple way that you can kind of check at home if the vagus nerve tone is good.
Got another rhyme for you now. So if you want to, if you want to relax, or if you're trying to relax, then you want to stimulate your vagus nerve to the
Mm-hmm.
max.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's what is a problem. I think nowadays we're all chronically stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that stress impairs the vagus nerve. So there's the ability of the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response, to actually downregulate or suppress the vagus nerve. Almost like we talk about with the car, there's an accelerator and a brake system.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how, like, when you drive a car, at least a traditional car, there's a accelerator and a brake, and you can't drive, you can't put both feet on the accelerator and the brake at the same time. We can't put the flight or flight, response, which is the accelerator, and the brake, which is the vagus nerve side, on at the same time. So if we can stimulate the vagus nerve, we're actually kind of down-regulating the fight or flight response, which is mostly what we want because we're mostly chronically stressed all the time.
Absolutely. Yes. And if you have any way to like measure your heart rate variability, I know nowadays there's like a lot of devices with like the Aura Ring or like even I think the Apple Watch can like measure like heart rate variability. If you have like a good high heart rate variability, that also means like the vagus nerve and like might be like working overall okay. But if it's low, that might be a sign as well that might not be optimal.
And just a couple other clues, medically or health-wise. So if someone has chronic heart issues, lung issues, if they have sleep apnea, if they have metabolic syndrome, but also if they have anxiety or depression, that's associated with low heart rate variability
Mm-hmm.
statistically. So most likely someone with a chronic medical or health or mental health issue likely has low heart rate variability. And that could be a cause. That could be one of the root causes of why you are not feeling as optimally as you want to feel.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'll say one more thing, which is that heart rate variability, if someone doesn't have an Oura Ring or Apple Watch, what is a quick and dirty way to test kind of empirically in terms of your body's symptoms if someone has low HRV? One of the things could be, are you feeling tight muscles? Are you feeling chest tightness? Are you feeling belly tightness? Are you feeling, headaches? Or there's different signs that people have, and then when they feel more relaxed, those symptoms go away.
Yes.
Or just some other thing. So when we come back, we will discuss the actionable steps that you can take together with us to help you understand the gut-brain connection. This is Know Your Body. Welcome back to Know Your Body. I'm Dr. Andrew Wong, alongside our Director of Functional Nutrition at Capital Integrated Health, Araceli Benavides. Earlier, we discussed the gut-brain connection, why it's so important for your health. And now let's talk about how we at Capital Integrative Health find out the root causes of why the gut and brain might become disconnected and what steps we'll take together to address this and reconnect your gut and brain. So, Araceli, I think you want to start us off with how can we rebalance this connection between the gut and brain? We know why it's so important now. We understand that. What are some of the root causes for disconnection and how can we reconnect?
Yes, and as we were discussing briefly, we've seen in clinical practices this is really so important to help patients like really get better, and we'll talk about some cases as well. So really, when we get to this point that we need to rebalance the nervous system with our patients, there's one particular program that I really like using with my patients that uses hypnotherapy to rebalance the gut and brain connection. And this is called Nerva IBS program. So it is like totally remote. You can just do it like audio at home. And it's basically you get into this deep relaxation where it's more like working with your unconscious mind to rebalance that gut brain connection. And they have different exercises and different kind of audios that they guide you through that can really help. And I've had patients that have done like a lot of treatments for like IBS, CBOL, like we had been doing like the removing the bad bacteria, and we had been stimulating like stomach acid and like replenishing the digestive enzymes and kind of working on motility, and things kind of like would get better until a certain point. But it wasn't until after we like really worked on the nervous system and like rebalanced the nervous system that the symptoms really calmed down, because it just gives that sensation to our digestive tract that everything is okay and things are like safe. And because our gut can really develop like a hypersensitivity, right? After you've been having like negative symptoms and having like responses like bloating and gas and pain and cramping, like the more that we have this, the more sensitive those nerve ends in the gut become. So giving that those signals of like it's okay, it's safe, we don't have to be like reacting to all of these different like foods, it definitely helps to like resolve those like digestive symptoms a lot of the times.
When I first started doing the Institute for Functional Medicine training and we talked about the 5-hour program to restore gut healing, Araceli, I also had that same and the teaching from them, which is that, that 5-hour program of removing bad bacteria or pathogenic organisms, then replacing enzymes, repopulating the microbiome, repairing the gut lining. And then the fifth thing was rebalancing the nervous system and rebalancing that gut-brain connection. And honestly, I didn't believe them. I didn't believe that that was actually the most important. And now I'm a full believer in that. I really feel like the gut-brain connection is the missing piece. And without addressing that, then we're going to hit a plateau.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I really was thinking about one specific case that I had a patient that was in her 70s with like a lifelong like history of like GI issues. And she had tried so many things. It got to me like just kind of like as a last resource. And we kind of tried the same, like going through the 5 hours and like still kind of healing the gut. But it was all, as I mentioned, would always get to like a certain point of like, yes, feeling better, but still there, and then relapses. And then I was like, let's try, like for her, we did the nerve program and some more like vagus nerve stimulation exercises that we'll mention like in a second. And it was like the only thing that helped like totally resolve. And even in her 70s, after having GI symptoms for like over like 40 years or so. So that can be like really game changer. And after that one experience was when I was like, this really can help a lot of people. And I started using it more and more and more. And I started to see the same result over and over. And that was like really eye-opening. As you mentioned, you always like know that it's important, but you're like, is it really, like how much can it impact? And then you see it in clinical practice and you're like, wow, this definitely needs to be happening more.
I want to give a shout out to Dr. Dan Gelman, who is our psychologist here at Capital Integrated Health. And there was a time that we were sharing a patient, and the patient had irritable bowel syndrome. She was a stressed out executive. I think she was a mom of 2 or 3 kids as well. So she's working full time, working at home, as you know, working in terms of taking care of her kids. And she had these IBS symptoms, and we did the usual things that we would do in functional medicine, gut repair, maybe treat candida, things like that. And those things helped, but only to a certain point, like you said, with your patient case. And one of the things that we did was she did cognitive behavioral therapy with Diane. And this was like, after 5+ years of having IBS, her IBS symptoms went away once she started getting cognitive behavioral therapy. So I think we have to really understand in functional medicine, integrative health, it's about merging the two worlds together. They're not really separate, they're really connected. And the more we can see that the gut and brain are really connected, the better off our health will be.
Absolutely. And there's definitely things that you can do at home that are totally free that can help you like stimulate your vagus nerve. And some of those are you can like gargle vigorously. You can use like really any solution. It could be water, it can be like a mint solution or salt water. And when you gargle, you want to get to the point that you feel like your eyes are watering. And that's the moment that you know that your vagus nerve has been activated. So you can try maybe like up to like 2 to 3 times like during the day, and especially if you can do some of that before you eat, because we were learning earlier in this episode that when our vagus nerve is stimulated, it's the best time for us to be able to digest properly. So that's one simple way that you can do it, as well as like other exercises that will bring like vibration to this area of the throat, that it's like really innervated by the vagus nerve, and that can be like chanting or like humming, um, And the gargling, as I mentioned, or like even alternated nostril breathing, so like inhaling through one side, exhaling through the other side, then inhaling through that other side, then exhaling through the other side. That friction of the breathing through only one nostril can also help to like further stimulate the vagus nerve.
Gratitude can also stimulate the vagus nerve, gratitude, and then kind of taking a pause as well.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if chanting and taking a pause at the same time, chanting the gratitude.
Yes,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
All right. So quite a lot of things. I like this also, like look at the food, enjoy the colors, the palate, the taste, like everything that you're anticipating. You're increasing salivary amylase. You're increasing your body's ability to start stimulating that stomach acid and pancreatic enzymes. If you are taking a pause before you're eating, I think there's a movement called slow food movement as well that started in Italy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and the idea is that we are often rushing, so let's create a movement called slow food.
Hmm. Yeah, and if we take a pause and look at our food, smell it, and if you notice that you're salivating, then you know you're ready to digest, and you know your body's like ready to receive that food. But a lot of the times, if you think about it, we're just mindlessly just grabbing the food and going, and like we're not really paying attention to it. So our body doesn't even know that we're like getting ready to eat. So taking that pause before eating can be really significant for like getting our digestion ready. And along with that is kind of what we were discussing earlier about chewing and making sure we're like mixing that food with our saliva, making sure that it resembles baby food and getting it ready um, for like swallowing. And I think it's pretty interesting that nowadays there's devices that they've created to like help even further with this. There's one called pulsetto that goes here like around the neck. Then so it also has like those vibrations that help stimulate the vagus nerve. And because the vagus nerve, yes, it's like the gut brain connection, it can help things like digestion and like motility, but it can also help things like sleep and like anxiety, like managing stress, and even pain. I think the creator of these device like made it to like help her wife's pain.
Hmm.
So like even at that level of like helping the nervous system, and I have had patient success with like helping their like digestive symptoms as well. And there's another one that you can use that it's a polyneuro that is on the wrist, and that can also send like vibrations to mimic like touch and also like stimulate this vagus nerve. And I can tell like a quick story of a patient that um really we were trying so many things to like help regulate their blood sugar, and we know like when we're stressed and our cortisol is high, that can dysregulate like blood sugar. And we she was doing like ketogenic diet, even tried like one meal a day, so like very long fasts, and we're going to talk about fasting in just a second. And so many things that nothing was like really changing her like blood sugar regulation. And she was using a continuous glucose monitor. She could actually see like her blood sugar fluctuations throughout the day, so she would notice that her blood sugar would go up even without eating. So like when she was stressed. And so she decided to try the like in this particular case was the Apollo Neuro, and was the only thing that she could see like after wearing it, that her blood sugar was a lot more like regulated and her baseline was lower, and really kind of shifted her metabolism from like controlling that stress and that even like stimulating that vagus nerve. So it can have an impact in like so many different ways.
It's pretty amazing. So stress causes leaky gut issues, stress causes leaky brain, as well as stress causing a blood sugar elevation. I wonder if you should behave more like your dog Poncho.
I know, right? He's
Yes.
chill all the time.
He's all the time. He's salivating. He's probably getting the
Oh,
enzymes
yes.
ready to go.
Yes. He salivates a lot.
Always ready to eat.
Always ready to eat.
And doesn't seem stressed at all either. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. That's great. So when we come back, some final thoughts and routines that can help you understand the gut-brain connection. This is Know Your Body. Welcome back to Know Your Body. I'm Dr. Andrew Wong. And today, Araceli and I talked about gut-brain connection and why gut-brain connection is so important. First of all, the key takeaways from today are that the gut and the brain, it's actually a two-way street. There's a connection between that from the vagus nerve to different neurotransmitters like serotonin, like stress hormone cortisol. So basically, it's a two-way street. Gut health affects brain health affects gut health. And this is really, really important if you're having irritable bowel syndrome or gut issues, or even SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or conversely, if you're having mental health issues like anxiety or depression or even brain fog or any of those or all the above, then you have to look at the other side. You have to look at, if someone's having gut health issues, look at your brain health. If you're having brain health issues, look at your gut health. These are all affecting synergistically each other. And then number three, what to remember in terms of how to impact your vagus nerve, how to strengthen that connection between the gut and brain. We talk about first very simple things like giving gratitude before eating, pausing to let the digestive enzymes start to kind of salivate like Araceli's dog Poncho. We talked about ways to kind of easily and naturally stimulate your vagus nerve, especially it runs through the back of your throat, like singing, like chanting, even gargling, gargle a little bit extra time when you're brushing your teeth at night or during the daytime. There's also a nice book that is called The Mind-Gut Connection by Dr. Mayer, Mayer, that explains this gut-brain connection in much more detail. We hope you've had a great time listening to us and participating with us. Thank you so much for being here today on Know Your Body. I'll be back next week with Araceli every week to talk about your health and how you can achieve the body, mind, and spirit that you want and that you deserve. If you would like to learn more about Capital Integrative Health, check out our website at cihealth.org. That's cihealth.org, Capital Integrative Health. Have a great week.